In a world where verbal battles have become commonplace, where triumph in argument is elevated to the rank of intellectual achievement, a natural question arises. Is arguing truly a display of strength, or does it conceal something else? Perhaps even weakness? Let us delve into the depths of the philosophy of Friedrich Nietzsche, one of the most controversial thinkers in human history, to uncover his understanding of why arguing often becomes a refuge for those who feel weak. Through this exploration, each person can reevaluate their approach to conflict situations and view interactions between people from a completely new angle. Nietzsche's philosophy, which subverts conventional norms, offers a unique perspective on the nature of argument. He argued that true strength lies not in the ability to prevail in discussions or win debates, but in the courage to steadfastly adhere to one's beliefs, even in silence. According to Nietzsche, those who tirelessly engage in arguments often seek to compensate for a lack of inner clarity or self-confidence. To better understand this idea, it is necessary to consider his overall concept of human nature and the dynamics of power. Why do people engage in verbal battles? Are they driven by a desire to defend a personal position, a thirst for power, or a need to protect their ego? Friedrich Nietzsche argued that the root of most disagreements lies in a vulnerable ego, in the desire to assert oneself by subjugating others or achieving their agreement. According to the philosopher, this is a manifestation of weakness. Those strong in spirit, on the other hand, do not need external approval. They are confident in their righteousness and unwavering in the face of others' disagreement. In his outstanding work, Thus Spoke Zarathustra, Nietzsche introduced the concept of the Übermensch, a person who transcends conventional norms and lives in accordance with their own essence. The Übermensch does not waste time on meaningless arguments. Why? Because his energy is directed towards self-improvement, not towards proving his significance to others. Nietzsche believed that those who constantly engage in arguments are mired in so-called resentment, a state where a person defines themselves through opposition to others rather than through their own values. This reactive way of life is, in essence, a manifestation of weakness, as the person relinquishes control over their emotions and self-identification to external forces. Reflecting on recent disagreements, it is worth considering whether the essence of the argument truly lay in the issue being discussed, or whether deeper emotional motives were hidden behind it. Perhaps it was an attempt to demonstrate one's intellect, prove one's correctness, or earn recognition. Friedrich Nietzsche argued that the true strength of a person is manifested in the ability to recognize and control these impulses. Instead of an impulsive reaction, strong-spirited people prefer a balanced analysis and the ability to rise above the situation. It is important to note that Nietzsche did not call for inaction or silence in situations where justice and truth are violated. On the contrary, he believed that actions carry far more weight than words. For him, true strength lay in demonstrating one's beliefs through actions and life choices, rather than wasting energy on empty demagoguery. A person with inner strength does not need to convince others of their righteousness. They simply embody their values in life. Such people understand that arguments rarely lead to a change in anyone's point of view, but more often only strengthen existing positions. As Nietzsche noted, man has always faced the need to resist pressure from society, which seeks to suppress his individuality. The one who chooses this path often finds himself alone and experiences fear, however. According to the philosopher, no price is too high for the opportunity to remain the master of oneself and one's destiny. In the modern world, where social networks amplify any disagreements many times over, turning even minor disputes into real battles, this thought is particularly relevant. Nietzsche's philosophy encourages us to think about the purpose of our actions, asking the question, what am I trying to achieve in this case? Is this argument worth the effort, or am I simply succumbing to external pressure and expectations? Instead of wasting energy on destructive conflicts, Nietzsche suggests focusing on strengthening inner strength. But what is meant by strengthening inner strength? According to Nietzsche, the starting point is self-knowledge. He argued that most people do not have a full understanding of their true motives, fears, and desires. A lack of self-awareness makes us vulnerable to external influences. susceptible to manipulation and provocation. Inner strength, on the other hand, grows out of a deep knowledge of oneself, out of the ability to remain steadfast and calm in the face of external chaos. Nietzsche's critique of arguments also touches on the concept of truth. He believed that absolute truth is merely an illusion, a construct created by people to organize the world around them. If truth is subjective, what's the point of wasting time arguing about it? Nietzsche argued that it's far more important to strive for one's personal truth, one's own understanding of the world, than to engage in endless debates about universal truths. He urged people to explore their values, beliefs, and goals, rather than blindly following social norms or seeking confirmation of their rightness in arguments. This idea is both liberating and challenging. It requires us to abandon the desire to always be right, to embrace uncertainty, and to focus on self-discovery. Nietzsche's philosophy encourages us to consider, who am I beyond my arguments? What do I genuinely stand for? And am I living an authentic life, or am I simply reacting to the expectations of others? In conclusion to this section, it is worth considering the following. When the desire to argue arises, it is necessary to pause and reflect. Ask yourself whether it is a manifestation of ego or an opportunity for personal growth. Nietzsche's philosophy encourages us to view arguments not as battles for victory, but as reflections of the inner world. It is important to realize what will be reflected in this mirror. Furthermore, it is worth turning to Nietzsche's deep understanding of the dynamics of power and its influence on human behavior. At the heart of his philosophy lies the concept of the will to power, which he saw as the fundamental driving force behind all human actions. This is not merely a desire for survival, but also for prosperity, development, and self-affirmation in the world. However, according to Nietzsche, true power lies not in controlling others, but in self-control. This distinction plays a key role in understanding the causes of disputes. In most cases, disputes arise from a mistaken attempt to establish dominance or impose one's point of view. Nietzsche considered it particularly disturbing that such behavior often conceals inner emptiness, self-doubt, and a lack of purpose. People engage in disputes not out of strength, but out of a sense of threat, inadequacy, or insecurity. As an example, Nietzsche often criticized the so-called herd mentality. By herd, he meant people who follow social norms and seek confirmation of their rightness through collective agreement. They engage in disputes to strengthen their position in the group, prove their loyalty to common beliefs, or silence dissenting voices that question their comfort. Nietzsche considered this a sign of weakness. A truly strong person, a superman, does not need the approval of the herd. He lives in accordance with his values, even if they contradict accepted norms. Everyday life provides many examples illustrating this concept. It is enough to look at the countless discussions raging in the virtual space, where polemics often descend into insults and an endless stream of counter-arguments. Such battles rarely lead to constructive dialogue or the achievement of consensus. Rather, they expose the deep-seated complexes of the participants, their desire for rightness, a sense of superiority, or an escape from their own vulnerability. Nietzsche's philosophical lens allows us to see these situations as merely a distraction, leading away from the true goal, self-improvement and personal growth. How do we break the vicious circle? Nietzsche would argue that the starting point is a cardinal shift in priorities, a reorientation from external evaluation to internal development. Instead of wasting energy trying to convince others, one should direct it towards creating a more complete and stronger personality. This requires considerable courage. The courage to face one's fears, admit one's shortcomings, and accept the inevitable discomfort that accompanies change. Equally important is humility, a willingness to recognize the limitations of one's own knowledge and to realize that one's personal point of view is only one of many. In the pursuit of truth and personal growth, it is important to understand Friedrich Nietzsche's position regarding interaction with the world. The philosopher did not call for isolation or complete abandonment of participation in public life. On the contrary, he emphasized the necessity of meaningful relationships and intellectual exchange for the development of the individual. However, according to Nietzsche, such interactions should be based on mutual respect and a desire to learn deep truths, rather than on a desire to dominate or belittle others. Approaching discussions with genuine curiosity, rather than from a defensive position, creates fertile ground for genuine connection and mutual understanding. A logical question arises. If disputes often indicate weakness, then what is true strength in disagreements? For Nietzsche, the point is not to win an argument, but to be able to overcome it. Strong individuals are distinguished by their unbiased thinking, the ability to interact with ideas rather than egos, and unwavering loyalty to their values, even when their beliefs are questioned. They do not avoid difficult conversations, but they also do not feel the need to assert their worth through confrontation. As an illustration, imagine a situation where someone questions your beliefs or criticizes your actions. A natural reaction might be to defend yourself or prove you are right. However, what if instead you paused and reflected? What if you used this moment to analyze your own assumptions, look for the merit in the criticism, or simply let the comment pass without feeling the need to react? This is not a manifestation of passivity, but a demonstration of strength and self-control. Such an approach demonstrates that a person is not easily swayed by external factors, and that their self-esteem does not depend on the opinions of others. Understanding Nietzsche's ideas opens up new horizons and approaches to conflict resolution. Instead of perceiving disagreements as battlefields where one must prevail, they can be seen as a stimulus for personal growth and the development of relationships. This transformation of perception can transform not only interpersonal relationships, but also socio-cultural dynamics as a whole. By prioritizing mutual understanding rather than satisfying one's own ego, a favorable ground is created for constructive dialogue aimed at creation, not destruction. In this regard, it is worth taking the time to reflect on how these ideas relate to each person's personal experience. Have there been situations where an argument turned into a pointless struggle to prove one's own rightness rather than a search for truth? What conclusions were drawn about one's own weaknesses and aspirations in such situations? And how would life have changed if one had been guided by Nietzsche's philosophy in such circumstances? The appeal of Nietzsche's teaching lies in its relevance, which does not lose its value over time. Even in today's world characterized by rapid change and universal interconnectedness, his call for self-improvement and authenticity sounds as convincing as before. He urges us to step away from the hustle and bustle, explore our own motives, and accept the challenge of living life in accordance with our deepest values. However, this is only a superficial look at Nietzsche's philosophy. It offers a deeper understanding of the nature of human relationships, the dynamics of power, and the pursuit of a meaningful life. In the future, we will consider how his ideas can help not only in resolving conflicts, but also in overcoming them, which will lead to finding a sense of purpose and self-realization. For a thorough understanding of the Nietzschean view of the futility of debate, it is necessary to take a closer look at his concept of self-overcoming, which is one of the main elements of his philosophical system and the leitmotif of his works. According to Nietzsche, human existence is not a static state, but a continuous process of development, overcoming challenges and transformation. Strength, from his point of view, stems from the ability to overcome not only external obstacles, but also internal shackles, fears, doubts, and the ego's constant need to confirm its own significance. By engaging in disputes, especially those fueled by selfish motives, people often lose sight of this higher goal. The energy they waste proving their rightness would be much more usefully directed towards self-improvement, understanding others, or deepening their own views. Nietzsche's works serve as a reminder that the most important battles take place not on the verbal battlefield, but within ourselves. One of Nietzsche's most provocative ideas is his critique of morality as a tool in the hands of the weak. He argued that traditional moral systems often arise from resentment, that is, a deep-seated resentment of the strong by those who feel powerless. This resentment leads to the formation of moral attitudes that prioritize meekness, submission, and conformity, rather than strength, ambition, and individuality. In this context, disputes can be seen as a continuation of this dynamic, as an attempt by the weak to impose their values on others, instead of rising above their own limitations. The pressing question arises: how do we build interaction with others while avoiding the shackles of fruitless arguments? Friedrich Nietzsche, an outstanding thinker, believed that the key to resolving this dilemma lies in the art of dialogue. Unlike disputes, which are competitive in nature and aimed at the unconditional victory of one of the parties, dialogues involve cooperation and are aimed at achieving mutual understanding. In the process of dialogue, both sides approach the discussion from a position of humility and a sincere willingness to learn new things. They do not seek to assert their own superiority, but rather collaboratively explore various ideas and concepts. Consider, for instance, a situation where two close friends disagree on a deeply held belief. In the heat of an argument, each friend might stubbornly stand their ground, refusing to concede, which would undoubtedly escalate tensions. However, within a constructive dialogue, they could ask each other clarifying questions, share personal experiences, and seek common ground. This approach would not only lead to a deeper understanding of each other's positions, but also to personal growth for both participants. Nietzsche's aversion to pointless arguments is not a call to completely avoid all conflict. Conflict, when approached constructively, can be a powerful catalyst for development and progress. The philosopher urges us to rise above petty squabbles and focus on truly important things, such as striving for self-improvement, authenticity, and a life lived in accordance with one's own principles and beliefs. This approach requires a fundamental shift in thinking, from perceiving others as adversaries to viewing them as fellow travelers on a fascinating life journey. Friedrich Nietzsche's philosophical concept of eternal recurrence offers a profound thought experiment. It calls upon us to imagine that every moment of life will be experienced again and again in an infinite cycle of repetition. This perspective forces one to confront their decisions and values that define their existence. The task becomes choosing whether to spend eternity mired in petty disagreements or to direct one's energy toward more meaningful goals. Such a view has tremendous transformative potential. It serves as a reminder that time is a precious resource, and every minute spent on pointless arguments is a missed opportunity for a richer life. Instead of engaging in fruitless discussions, it is more worthwhile to direct one's energy toward creation, learning, and establishing deep connections with those around us. Nietzsche's philosophy also encourages a reevaluation of the relationship to truth. His famous statement, "There are no facts, only interpretations," does not deny the significance of truth, but emphasizes that it is always shaped by personal perspective. In the heat of an argument, the conviction often arises that one's own point of view is infallible, and all others are dismissed as erroneous. However, Nietzsche urges us to embrace the multifaceted nature of truth and acknowledge that different points of view can coexist. Such a shift in worldview can fundamentally change the approach to disagreements. Instead of perceiving them as a threat, they can be seen as an opportunity to expand one's understanding. It is necessary to learn to listen without prejudice, ask questions without hostility, and learn without fear. Nietzsche's teachings call not only for overcoming arguments, but also for self-overcoming. This is the essence of self-improvement, the relentless pursuit of becoming better than one is now. It involves shedding the fears, doubts, and egoism that bind us and prevent us from living an authentic life. As we approach the conclusion of this section, it is worth reflecting on the significance of silence in conflict situations. Friedrich Nietzsche argued that silence can be a manifestation of strength, a conscious refusal to engage in fruitless arguments and petty squabbles. This is not silence dictated by submission, but silence born of self-assurance, the silence of a person who knows their own worth and does not need constant validation. The next time the desire arises to enter into an argument, it is recommended to pause and ask yourself, what am I trying to achieve? Assess whether the situation is an opportunity for personal growth or simply a reaction to the challenges of the ego. Nietzsche's philosophy calls for choosing the path of strength, wisdom, and self-improvement, even if it seems more difficult. In the concluding section, we will consider how Nietzsche's philosophy offers not only a critique of fruitless arguments, but also a kind of guide to a more meaningful and fulfilling life. The revelations to be made are capable of transforming not only interactions with others, but also the perception of oneself in the world. In the culminating moment of the Nietzschean view of polemics, we are presented with the philosopher's deepest insight. True power lies not in subjugating others, but in perfecting oneself. And this self-improvement goes far beyond simply avoiding arguments. It implies a way of life that reflects inner harmony, purposefulness, and resilience of spirit. Nietzsche was convinced that true strength manifests itself in silence, steadfastness, and the ability to rise above worldly vanity. To gain a deeper understanding of this concept, it's worth exploring Nietzsche's idea of the Übermensch, or overman, who embodies the pinnacle of human potential. This is an individual who has overcome societal stereotypes, personal limitations, and embraced life in all its diversity. The Übermensch, according to Nietzsche, doesn't engage in pointless arguments because they see no need to. Their very life is a compelling argument, where actions, values, and achievements speak far louder than any words. In the modern world, this philosophy might seem paradoxical. We live in an age of continuous communication, where opinions are exchanged, discussed, and analyzed with incredible speed. Social media, news outlets, and public discussions often prioritize quantity over quality, creating the illusion that the loudest voice is a sign of strength. However, Nietzschean philosophy urges us to distance ourselves from this chaos and focus on what truly matters: our personal journey of growth and self-discovery. So, how can we embody Nietzsche's philosophical principles in modern reality? First and foremost, we must realize that not every disagreement deserves our engagement. When faced with a potential conflict, ask yourself, is it worth my energy? Does participating in this discussion align with my personal beliefs and life goals, or is it merely a waste of time? Nietzsche argued that the ability to choose when and how to engage in a dispute is a sign of inner strength. It demonstrates that a person is not a slave to their emotions, but controls their actions. Secondly, we should strive to approach disagreements with curiosity rather than defensiveness. Instead of trying to prove ourselves right at all costs, we can try to understand the other person's point of view. This doesn't mean abandoning our own beliefs, but rather being open to the possibility of learning something new or seeing the world from a different angle. Nietzsche highly valued intellectual courage, the willingness to question one's own assumptions and embrace the complexity of the world. Thirdly, it's important to focus on embodying our values in life rather than defending them verbally. This means living in accordance with our principles, even when faced with opposition. Nietzsche believed that authenticity is far more convincing than any argument. When a person lives in harmony with their beliefs, they inspire others, not with words, but with their personal example. Let's turn our gaze to the broader panorama of life as seen through Nietzsche's eyes. At the very heart of his philosophical views lies a call to meet the vicissitudes and unpredictability of existence with courage and creative impulse. He argued that life is not a puzzle requiring a solution, but rather a blank canvas on which we are called to weave the tapestry of our own meaning. In this context, polemics and disagreements distract us from the true task, becoming who we are meant to be. One of the most iconic concepts in Nietzsche's legacy is amor fati, love of fate. This worldview calls on us to accept all the twists and turns of our lives, both light and dark, triumphs and failures, as integral elements of our life's journey. By embracing this philosophy, we can face conflicts with equanimity. Instead of seeing disagreements as obstacles, we can perceive them as opportunities for personal growth, knowledge enrichment, and character building. This leads us to perhaps the most valuable lesson, the realization that strength lies not in avoiding conflicts, but in transforming them. When we approach disagreements with wisdom, humility, and a commitment to self-improvement, we can turn even the most challenging encounters into moments of profound transformation. We can rise above the petty desire to prevail and instead focus on true values, building strong relationships, fostering mutual understanding, and living an authentic life. In conclusion to this captivating immersion into the depths of Nietzsche's philosophy, it is worth pausing and carefully reflecting on the following. The truth he proposed, as he saw and proclaimed it, often becomes a manifestation of inner weakness, not because it is inherently false, but because it distracts our attention from the more important task, self-overcoming. True strength lies not in seeking dominion over others, but in mastering oneself. It manifests in the courage to live in accordance with one's beliefs, in the willingness to question established ideas, and in the wisdom to concentrate on truly meaningful things. Therefore, the next time the desire arises to enter into an argument, it is necessary to pause and deeply consider these words. One should ask oneself, what goal am I trying to achieve? What does this moment say about my own insecurities or desires? And how can I use this experience for personal growth, learning, and becoming a stronger and more authentic version of myself? Ultimately, this philosophy does not call for avoiding conflicts, but offers ways to overcome them. It is a call to rise above worldly vanities, to meet life's challenges with courage and a creative approach, and to live in a way that reflects our highest potential. A unique opportunity is offered to become the architects of our own destiny, the artists of personal meaning, and the sovereign masters of our lives. Perhaps this is the key lesson that being teaches us. The most compelling argument that we can present to the world is not the words spoken, but the life path that we consciously